Chairman, we're ready to get started whenever you are.
Thank you, Doug. With that, I'll go ahead and call to order the regularly scheduled Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Tuesday, January 28th, 2025. We'll go ahead and start with roll call.
Chairman Dana Hennis,
Present.
Commissioner Brian Clark, Commissioner Jeannie Greger, Commissioner Jim Main,
Present.
Commissioner Bobby Rossadillo.
Present.
Thank you. So we'll start, first on the agenda is the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve this consent agenda.
Thank you.
I'll second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. So next up is the public hearing for case number 24-01-CPM and 24-01-ZC for the Gemstone Technology Park. I, at this time, have to recuse myself as I am a direct neighbor to this, and I will be testifying on this. So, Vice Chairman Brian Clark, it's all yours.
All righty. Oh, we will open the public hearing for case number 24-01 CPM, Comprehensive Plan Amendment, and the 24-01 ZC rezone for Gemstone Technology Park. Before we move to testify, is there anybody in the audience who wishes to testify that did not previously sign up? All right. Judy Yamamoto. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Staff has to present and the applicant first.
Yeah, there we go. I am so sorry.
Yep, no problem.
I said I was ready.
All right.
Staff?
Okay. Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, Doug Hanson, Planning and Zoning Director, 751 West 4th Street, Cuna. The applicant requests a comprehensive plan map amendment, changing the future land use designation of the subject site from agriculture to industrial, and a rezone from agriculture to M1 light industrial. The site is located at 3250 South Locust Grove Road. The application was initially proposed over approximately 643.3 acres. The applicant submitted an updated boundary description, dropping the acres to be rezoned by approximately 20.63 acres to provide additional buffering to the neighboring property owners to the north. Please note, this is a correction to an error in paragraph 3 of the staff analysis that listed 206.3 by mistake. Negotiations at the time of the Osprey Ridge Development Agreement approval in 2008 were held with the city, Cuna Police Department, Ada County Highway District, Cuna Rural Fire District, Cuna School District, and Cuna Library District. The applicant is actively working with the aforementioned agencies to come to agreements to mitigate the impacts that may arise as a result of the development. With said agreements in place, the applicant is entitled to file for comprehensive plan, future land use map amendments for future development per the approved Osprey Ridge Development Agreement. Agency letters are all available for you within your packet. 2 additional letters of support were submitted after the application packet was finalized. Hard copies are available on the desk next to the public hearing sign-in, and they will be included as an exhibit to the minutes. Upon review, staff finds the application to be in compliance with Cuna City Code and Idaho Code and the approved Osprey Ridge Development Agreement. Staff recommends that if the commission recommends approval of case number 24-01-CPM and 24-01-ZC to the City Council, that the applicant be subject to the conditions as listed in staff's report. And with that, I will stand by for any questions.
Any questions at this time? Is the applicant present? Yes, sir. If you wouldn't mind pushing the little green button there. The microphone.
Got it.
If you would state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Heath Clark, 251 East Front Street in Boise is my office address. I'm representing the applicant, Diode Ventures. We also have a couple of members of our team here. John Michael Handley is our Senior Project Development Manager, and Rachel Atterbury, Chief Operating Officer. So hopefully between the 3 of us, we can answer any questions that you have through the course of the evening. So we are here to discuss 2 applications, as Doug mentioned, and maybe I can shrink this just a little, make it easier to see. Okay, is it okay if I go to full screen, Doug? Okay. think that'll make it a little bit easier. So we are considering a comprehensive plan amendment and a rezone to permit a data center in an area southeast of town. Let's talk a little bit about where this is. So you can see up here, this is the city, kind of the city proper. Our application is down to the southeast. It's south of Cunamora Road between Locust Grove and Cloverdale. Right here is where I like to ride my bike on training rides. So it's an area I'm pretty familiar with personally as well. The comprehensive plan shows this as a property that is located on the edge of the area of city impact. So the current future land use designation is ag, but there's public ground on the south and residentially planned properties just to the north. We're asking to adjust the comprehensive plan to permit an industrial use, which, as I'll explain, is an extremely low intensity use for this property. So if we're fortunate enough to gain an approval, this area would be shown on the future land use map as industrial. So let's, those past few slides kind of show you what the maps would look like if we're fortunate enough to get an approval, but obviously we need to talk about what it is that we're proposing to do here. So the proposal is for a 620-acre data center at the properties that I mentioned before. It will be one zone and one user. There will not be a variety of users or uses on the site. The project is going to be phased over time in order to minimize disruptions to the neighbors. Generally speaking, we're looking at a phasing plan of approximately 10 years to bring all the facilities online. Once constructed, it will be a very low impact use. Little noise generation, little traffic, very little impact on services. In fact, as you saw in the packet, it's not even going to connect to city water or sewer, and it's going to be providing those services itself on site. Let's talk a little bit about some of the benefits, and then we'll come back to the use. So during the construction phase, that first 10-ish years, we're anticipating between 800 to 1,200 construction jobs. Once that construction phase is over, things settle down, it's 100-plus high-paying permanent jobs that would be located on site. In terms of infrastructure, as mentioned, we're not going to be using city water or sewer. We will, however, be working with Idaho Power to essentially, which has a transmission line that's right along the southern portion of our property. We'll be working with them on a substation improvement. All of that is going to result in overall infrastructure improvements for the area, which is necessary for a data center. As you can imagine, it needs to have a reliable power source. In terms of the use itself, it's quiet, not a bunch of noise or traffic, but it does provide a significant local investment. In terms of property taxes, the contribution to the community is huge and will generate a significant financial impact that will benefit the city and actually help carry the property tax burden for the entirety of the city. So this is the preliminary, oops, going too fast. It is only letting me go one direction. There we go. So this is the concept design for the facility. On the north is that undeveloped buffer area. This will help ensure that the area retains its open rural character and buffers against current and future neighboring uses on the north. Moving south here in the center, you see the data processing campus. Two primary accesses, one on the west here at Locust Grove and one on the south over at Barker. That's how folks will arrive at the series of buildings that will be built in that central area. Then on the south, we have the electrical and private utility facilities, including the water treatment plant. And again, all this is right next to that Idaho Power transmission corridor on the south. I mentioned the phasing, again, during the construction phase, the 800 to 1,200 construction jobs, and then once we get out of the construction phase into the operations, again, the 100 folks that it would be working there. Okay, so let's talk about the development agreement. So now that you're a little bit familiar with the project, let's get into the nuts and bolts of the entitlement. The development agreement in this case is something that's unique about the property. The development agreement is what's often referred to as the Osprey Ridge Development Agreement. We took a hard look at that development agreement. We went through it with staff, and we all concluded that it actually benefits the city to have that DA, to have it in place, because of the hoops that we have to jump through. Those hoops are significant. I've done a number of large planned communities around the Treasure Valley. The requirements that you have to jump through in this development agreement are very similar to those larger applications. And one of the reasons that makes it a high hurdle is that we actually have to arrive at specific agreements with the various agencies to make sure that our impacts are actually mitigated. And so of those agencies, there's 4 in particular, and Doug mentioned them: the school district, the police department, the fire district, and the library district. And we have met with each, and we either have deals signed or we're on the verge of having deals signed with all 4 of them. And I'll walk you through that in just a moment. But before I get into that, I kind of want to back up and talk about the community engagement that's gone on here. The applicant's done a really excellent job of engaging with the community, which I think is evidenced by the letters of support that you have in your packet. We all know that that doesn't always happen. We don't often see a bunch of letters of support of a project, especially one like this. And it came as a result of efforts, and it included the neighborhood meetings, these office hours that they held over at La Teda, and then one-on-one communications with members of the public. In addition to that, they've worked with Idaho Power and the other stakeholders, so they're at the point of being ready to sign contracts with Idaho Power to be able to do the construction for that new substation. There have been communications and meetings with CUNA Public Works. As I mentioned before, we're going to do the independent sewer and water systems. Of course, that doesn't mean that doesn't have any oversight. With an independent private water system, you have to go through the IDEQ and IDWR and Central District Health requirements. Same with regard to the wastewater system. That'll have to go through those other reviews, but it's not something that's going to be on the city's list of requirements. And also Ada County Highway District. This project's a little bit unusual in my experience. I've been doing this for 20-something years. You don't often see a traffic impact study for both the construction phase and then a separate traffic impact study for the ongoing operations phase. So there's 2 of them that have been prepared. ACHD's done their initial review. They've provided us comments. We've resubmitted to ACHD. We expect that we will have ACHD's final approval on all of this shortly. We expect that it actually would be limited to, the mitigation would be limited primarily to temporary measures during the construction phase, because when we get to the operations phase, again, it's just not a huge impact. But in any event, Doug has provided a condition of approval that requires us to obtain ACHD approval, so we know that the city will be covered on that point and that we do have to do what ACHD says we have to do. Okay, so coming back to the 4 agencies, and we do have a typo on this page. I'll get to it in just a second. So we've been hard at work, and this is where things stand. We have a memorandum of agreement with CUNA School District that is signed. The number here is wrong. It's not 900,000, it's actually 500,000. They have earmarked that for athletics and technology programs. So that memorandum of agreement signed, in place, done. CUNA Police, we've spent a lot of time with staff talking about what that agreement needs to look like. We will be making annual payments to the city to help fund what is essentially the costs of a sergeant for the foreseeable future. In our view, that well exceeds the impacts of the project, but that's what we felt was the appropriate thing, and you have a letter in your packet from the police chief acknowledging that. And between now and city council, we would anticipate signing a detailed MOU to confirm all of that. CUNA Rural Fire. So Chief Lawrence and Crystal have been meeting with us over the past few months. We've proposed a mitigation packet for fire valued at about $30 million. That contributes to the personnel costs that are needed to man a new station and a ladder truck. And Mr. Chair, I just have maybe one to 2 minutes left, so I'll wrap up quickly. So that contributes to the personnel costs that are needed for a new station and a ladder truck. So that's the negotiation that's not quite completed yet. As you guys know, Chief Lawrence had to go down to LA and has been fighting fires down there, and We are in ongoing discussions with him, but he did provide the letter saying that he believes that we're gonna get there, and we believe that as well. At this point, we think the only thing that's really needs to be worked out is just the timing of the payments. So between now and city council, we fully expect that that would be addressed. And then CUNA Library District, you saw a letter indicating that they didn't believe that, given the commercial nature of the project, that it wasn't gonna have an impact, so they stepped back. So I'll just finish with a couple of brief comments. So I do a lot of land use development work around the Treasure Valley. I've been thinking a lot about what it takes to not only have a successful project, but also what our cities and towns need in order to be able to fund the services that are required for those projects. Our state legislature has done us no favors on that front. Everybody here knows that. With the restrictions on budget growth and the limitations on new growth paying for those budgets, it's a real challenge. In this case, we have a really significant project in terms of what it's going to contribute in terms of property taxes. It brings on a huge investment in the community with as little impact as I can think of. I mean, we're not even connecting to the water and sewer systems. And in the meantime, we're making a significant investment in the police and the fire in particular with, again, bringing on these new high-paying jobs with a use that has a very low profile and a very low impact. We hope that we think that this is a huge positive for the community, and we hope you'll see it the same way, and we'd ask for a recommendation of approval. So, happy to answer any questions.
Can you go into the plans for our water, and sewer a little bit more in detail? How much do you plan on using? Is there the chance that later on it's not going to be enough to provide, for the entire data center?
Yeah, Commissioner Rosadillo, the modeling has been done for the sewer and water. There's an existing ag water permit or water right on the property that will be converted to be used for domestic use. If you're familiar with how that works, when you go from ag to domestic use, the IDWR reduces the amount of water that you can pump. But we've evaluated that, and we know the outside limit of what the water use requirements are that we're going to have, and we're comfortable that we're going to fit within all of that. When we get to the point of actually providing water, we have to go through the public water system rules that IDWR has in place that'll address things like water treatment and how we make sure that the water's safe for the employees and all that sort of thing. So that's a state-based regulatory process that we'll go through. On the wastewater, that would be a central district health primarily would be overseeing the wastewater management from there, and they will have to review our systems, and that'll be also a requirement of occupancy.
Thank you.
A question on that, when you're talking about wastewater, are you talking about water that's been used in the cooling process?
That, Commissioner Main, that's going to be both. That's going to be water that's used, to the extent water is used in the cooling process, and John Michael might be able to answer some of that a little bit better than me. But to the extent that it is used, it would go into the wastewater system, but it's going to be monitored and upheld. Like the standards will make sure that there's not an issue with groundwater flows or anything like that. But let me let John Michael speak to that.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioners. Yeah, from a quantity perspective, just at a high level, with that reduction in use for total volume we can use per year, we're taking basically a 33% cut for what could have been used for agriculture for what we can use. As he said, we're comfortable with that quantity on a yearly basis. The daily rate that we can even withdraw doesn't change. It is a cap that we're still comfortable with. It's nearish 5 MGD. From a discharge, a wastewater perspective, we would expect the vast majority of that to be going through the cooling system. And so even though this is talking about both cooling water discharge and domestic discharge, the domestic, on the grand scheme of things, is a much, much smaller component of that wastewater. Does that get to kind of what you were asking about?
A little bit. So basically, you're comparing this to the amount of water that would be used in an ag scenario. Okay, but you're cooling 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, correct?
That's right. We are not necessarily using water for all 24 hours, all 365 days. So one of the things that's beneficial about the climate here is that when it gets drier and it gets colder, we get to use less water. So during the winter months, generally call it September through March, there's little to no use for the cooling in those systems. So really, it would see a very similar kind of usage profile as we would in agriculture as well, but again, it would be a substantially reduced amount that we're allowed to use.
Okay, there's no recycling of the water that's used in the conditioning process?
Yeah, so that's including kind of a rough order of magnitude. We still haven't gone through detailed design. Rule of thumb, 3 times we would run that through the cycle, reuse what we can. Eventually, there gets to be an accumulation of either total dissolved solids, of any other kind of chemical that was already in the water before it goes through the cooling process in the first place, that we do have to start blowing that water down.
Right, and I assume that you're going to be drilling wells to provide this water source, correct?
So there are existing wells. I believe this would necessitate new wells, to answer your question.
Okay, and of course, you have to go through IDWR and DEQ, make sure that we don't infringe upon the agricultural water, or when you say it's not going to impact the city of Kuna also has wells.
Right.
And if we're in the same aquifer, that would probably have an effect on city water as well.
Absolutely, yeah, and so that's where the expertise that we get from local engineering consultants to advise on what is permissible and would impact folks.
Thank you.
So we're stuck on the water here. Is it going to be some form, is it a closed system or is it evaporative? Or is that water going to go back into the water table through the wastewater?
Yeah, so the intent is to have basically infiltration basins, so whatever is not evaporated away would go back into that actual aquifer, assuming we're able to treat it so that it's meeting the requirements necessary to be able to use that system.
This is probably a little off the wall. Has there been a comparative study on ag use versus this kind of use? Is it an increase in evaporation? I mean, it really comes down to surface area, I would imagine. Because with a lot of the plants are grabbing a hold of that, sucking it back into the ground a lot faster. So I guess, are we expecting to lose a lot more of that water into the sky?
I don't have an answer for you on that.
We're getting into the nuts and bolts here. I understand. So.
No, that's okay. And Doug reminded me I needed to state my name and address for the record. John Michael Hanley, office address 11401 Lamar Avenue, Overland Park, Kansas 66211.
Cool. Any other questions? No. Thank you. On to the public hearing? Or do we have? Sorry. My brain's going sideways. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing at 6:23. First on the list, at this point, is there anybody who has come in since we got started that wants to testify that didn't have an opportunity to sign up? If you wouldn't mind. Do you have a pen?
No pens.
They clean. Thank you, Doug. If you wouldn't mind, go ahead and just in favor, neutral, and opposition, if you don't mind. Thank you. All right, first on the list this evening, we've got Judy Yamamoto. And if you please state your name and address for the record.
It's Judy Yamamoto, Kuna, Idaho. My address is 5255 West Hubbard Road, Kuna, Idaho, 83634. We may get to have another one if we get big enough. I want to say thank you to my friends and neighbors who are here. We appreciate that. I see some familiar faces. For some I have never met. I know that we've maybe passed in some places, but never been able to introduce ourselves. So again, I am Judy Yamamoto, and my husband is Dwayne Yamamoto. Due to his declining health, he is not able to be here, so I am speaking on his behalf. Before I go any further, I would like to introduce our second daughter, Tricia Waters, in the back there. Her husband is doing daddy duties. He's taking the kids to their after-school functions and activities. Otherwise, he would have been here. Dwayne has actually been in this community area for 70 years. He is now going to be 91. He actually began farming when his parents bought a farm on Black Cat and Deer Flat Roads. He was raised with the ethics of hard work, being a good neighbor, and being honest and transparent to what things you do to your neighbors and to your community. We just celebrated our 57th anniversary. That's it's just a little speck, I guess, in time of goes by. In that time, we spent 40 years in the Little Red House next to Zamzows and across from the city park. We raised our children from infancy through college and high school graduation. In those years, he became a figure of hard work and someone community could trust. So he was asked to run and be mayor. It was about 1976. And when he became mayor, believe it or not, we were walking on boardwalks. And in his tenure, he saw the concrete sidewalks be put in, the senior citizens be built, and the Kuna City Park started. And he began some of the infrastructure improvements on the water system. He's also been involved in some of the service and total community services in Kuna, FFA, and particularly he helped spearhead the now Kuna Boys and Girls Club, which he was not able to see the fruition of his efforts. So the farming that he has developed is like a child to him. He has nurtured it, spent years on it, and treated it like it was a child that he was bringing up. And so we are very proud of him for that. And in closing, I just want to say that the revenues from this project, if it is approved, is of immense value to all the citizens of Kuna and as well as the whole community. It was once said that more is never enough. In this case, I think all cities know that. You get more, but it's never enough. So farming has become a challenge, and for Dwayne, he knows that it is time for a retirement. And so on his behalf, we appreciate the approval of this project from Diode and to benefit the community, and let us have a retirement that Dwayne certainly deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up to testify, we have Christy Yamamoto.
For the record, my name is Christy Yamamoto. My address is 2617 Century Park Boulevard, Austin, Texas. So my mom obviously just gave you some history on my dad and their involvement in the community over the years. And I'd like to share some broader context around my dad's history, specifically with this property, and the reasons why they are selling. My dad's family has deep roots in Idaho and Kuna. As a child during World War II, he and his family were forcibly removed from the Seattle area with only what they could carry and forcibly relocated to the Japanese internment camp in eastern Idaho. Having nothing to return to in Washington, His family struggled as a result of post-war prejudice, but were able to eventually purchase property in West Cuna, where they established a small farm and a dairy where my dad worked as a teenager. In 1962, over 60 years ago, he purchased this property from a loan that he secured based purely on his strong work ethic, given that he not have any credit history. Through decades of literally blood, sweat, and tears, he and his foreman, Ray Nebeker, transformed the property from lava and sagebrush into what it is today. And this property is a testament to his perseverance and resilience through physical, financial, and social hardship. As my mom just recounted, my dad has long cared for the community and has involved himself in numerous service roles in Cuna, the county, and the valley. The development of this facility aligns with his long-term interest in supporting the community as well as the city's goal of becoming economically diverse and vibrant. The ongoing tax revenue from this facility will help enable the city to do that with minimal impact to the city infrastructure. We understand the community's desire to retain the rural landscape. However, this property has been available for sale for the last 20 years to fund my parents' retirement. And during that time, there has not been any serious interest from any farmer or other ag-related entity, and due in part to not only the location, the size, but also the rising land values. We've also attempted to lease the property to other farmers in the area, and none have been willing to various considerations. This is not a multi-generational farm. My siblings and I don't have the knowledge, means, or the desire to continue farming. As my mom mentioned, my dad's health is such that he has not been able to participate in the farming activities in any capacity for the last several years, and we are relying entirely on Ray to manage the farm. While Ray is highly capable, this has placed us in a high-risk situation. My dad is now 90 and in failing health, and my mother is 83, and there's a sense of urgency to sell this property. This offer from Diode represents the first and only viable opportunity that has presented itself in nearly 20 years. We had previously explored offers for both solar and residential developments, both of which we knew there's opposition to, which further limited our opportunities to sell. As the former mayor, my dad has long understood the economic challenges of a rural town with a small and narrow tax base. And because of what he endured to purchase and transform this property, he's got an emotional attachment to it. And over the years, as we discussed the eventual sale of the property, he was always adamant that it be sold to somebody who would be a good steward of the land and respect it, as well as it be used for a higher purpose that could be beneficial to both not only the family, but to the community. And we firmly believe that this opportunity here meets both criteria and would benefit not only Ray, my family, and the community, and would also contribute to his legacy of greater economic stability and resilience for the community for which he so deeply cares. So,
Christie, just
Yep.
be aware that you are a little over time, so
yep,
if you could please wrap up.
I'm wrapping up.
Thank you.
So at this point, I'll just, ask that we ask for your approval in the rezoning request.
Thank you very much, appreciate it. Always feel, don't want to be rude, but at the same time. Next up to testify, we have David Crawford.
Acting Chairman, Commissioners, my name is David Crawford with Centurion Engineers, 2323 South Vista Avenue in Boise. I'm here tonight representing a local business owner, Tim Gordon, who couldn't be here tonight, so he asked me to stand in his stead to make sure that he wanted to get on the record that he supports this project. We wrote a letter that should have been given to you earlier, didn't make it in before I sent it in today, but that letter details out in depth about all the reasons why and how this project comports with the CUNA statutes and comprehensive plan goals. I'm not going to belabor reading them all, but suffice to say, it's pretty comprehensive. And I just wanted to make sure that Tim's voice was recognized tonight as a business owner and resident of the city of Cuna, that he does support this project. He believes it is a great project for Cuna. He's excited about the positive economic impact and quality jobs it's bringing. It is similar to other projects that were approved in the city of Cuna, so we're not asking for anything new. And he believes that the location is chosen as a logical step for this rezone and this use. As I said earlier, on behalf of Tim Gordon, he feels this project to be an economic benefit and a high-quality project and a long-term benefit to the city of Cuna. And I'm under 3 minutes.
Thank you, David. Next up to testify, we have Linda Ostalasa.
My name is Linda Ostalasa. I live at 1180 South Eagle Road, Cuna, Idaho. I am approximately a mile as the crow flies from this project. I have a farm there, and I think this is a fabulous project. The amount of money that it'll bring into the community with limited traffic. It's not a housing development that impacts the schools and the roads too. So I definitely support it. Thank you.
Next up to testify, Ray Nebeker.
My name's Ray Nebeker. I live at 3204 South Locust Grove, which is adjoining property to this project. And I kind of wear two hats here. I've worked on this farm since 1970. I've lived either on the farm or adjoining it since probably 1975. Probably half of this ground I have helped take out a sagebrush or whatever, so I've kind of got a vested interest, a little bit of emotional tie to it, and I am very in favor of it going to this kind of use rather than a multitude of homes. And over my 50-plus years of farming, I've farmed probably 600 acres that is under concentrated homes now. And I maybe even lose a 38-acre field this year that I might not be able to farm it if everything gets approved for it. They'll start roads in it this year. So that's about all I have to say, I guess, about it. I think it's the best option for me because I do not intend to leave I intend to live the rest of my life out right where I am. I don't see any better place to move to. And I would rather this than homes. And I know in time the place will be sold because I am getting up there at the age where I won't be able to farm it either, so it takes a lot of effort, and we've kind of intensively farmed it to be able to keep everything going, and that's coming to an end. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Next on the list is Jill Nebeker. You didn't mark if you wanted to testify or not. Okay. Thank you. Next on the list, Jim Williams. Also didn't mark if you wanted to testify or not. Okay, thank you. Tim Jensen.
Good evening, Tim Jensen with CUNA School District, 711 East Porter Street here in CUNA, obviously. Just wanted to stand up here in support of the project. You know, you guys know, we've been working for a long time, working with developers and these guys took the approach of coming to us and say, you know, building that community partnership and it's been a great process. They've been great people to work with, and so we wanted to reiterate, we submitted a letter of support, but obviously wanted to stand up in person and give our support for the project as well. So I'll stand for any questions. All right, thank you.
Tim.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Mike and Rebecca Lane. If you'd be so kind as to state name and record for the record, state name and address for the record, please.
Mike Lane, CUNA resident, 3015 Meadowview Road, CUNA, Idaho. Product of CUNA, 13 years kindergarten through high school, so proud CUNA K-man. So, really, I think what I want to talk about just a little bit is on the business side of this all. I had the pleasure of working my entire career in the semiconductor industry, part of high technology, which is part of the data center industry. Positive experience, positive influence on many communities, and my job included both typical human resource activities of both training and recruiting, but mostly I did merger and acquisition work. I was the guy that was sent into towns to help grow, to help hire, to also help shut down. And what I see from CUNA here is a great experience of you guys managing their growth. What I saw in so many towns, pick at Rochester, pick at International, is cities that maybe shut down, got afraid of growth. There is no status quo. There is either growing or shrinking. And those that were shrinking, I personally saw companies pull out, infrastructure, tax base reduce. So if I believe that the future is some growth, it's about managing growth. So I guess I would say I notice our CUNA library. I noticed the beautification down the sidewalks. Maybe the sidewalks that Dwayne helped turn to concrete, but we see the lamps, we see the holiday lights. You know, on and on and on. The park, holy cow. Okay, let's just be honest. I think you're doing a great job. The side too. So you know, I think this is a great project for CUNA. Technology, high tech brings more tax base. You get to do more of this growth and I think growth is good. It's easy for people to come up and say, well, they want no change, but change is inevitable. So good job on this committee, and I hope you approve this on behalf of our family.
Struggling to read this last name here. I'm sorry. Okay. Never mind. I've got here Lane Thornton.
Lane Thornton, 3224, well, 2800 South Swan Falls Road in CUNA. Probably of anybody in this room, this probably impacts me and my family more than anybody. We own and farm the property that borders this property on Locust Grove Road for over a mile. And so I guess for me, I guess if I had my wishes that it would stay farm. But also, you know, when they talk about this development agreement, me and my dad were part of that development agreement. And we probably have 1,500 acres that are in that. There's a picture in the packet that has our names on one of it that was annexed that same time that the Yamamoto property was annexed. I guess if you're going to use that development agreement, does that entitle all our property as well? That it fits in the same if you're going to use that. And also too, the Yamamoto's brought up the fact that, you know, nobody will lease this as a farm. I guess I've never been approached to lease it, where we farm, you know, quite a few acres around, and I also have two sons that farm as well, and would look for more. I guess I too also struggle where Ada County Highway hasn't come up with their, you know, what they're gonna do yet. It seems like we're a little bit ahead of ourselves here until we know that. You know, how is this gonna impact Locust Grove? Or is all this construction traffic gonna come down Locust Grove? Or is it gonna come down Cloverdale and then come in that way? But those roads at the moment are not conducive to this type of truck traffic. You know, and so there's some things here that I would like to know before I can really, you know, think that this ought to go forward. And I think too, maybe as commissioners as well, you know, it seems like we ought to know the whole project and know what everything is gonna be before we can even change the zoning at all. Because this is not next to any industrial site at all at the moment. It's next to farm ground. And until we know all the things, it should kind of stay that way. So, I'll stand for any questions, if there are any. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next up to testify, Dana Hennis.
Hi, my name's Dana Hennis, 3505 South Locust Grove Road. I'm directly across and right next to Mr. Thornton. As you know, I am also acting commissioner. I got on that role many years ago because of the annexation that went on that property, all the way from Swan Falls to Cloverdale. One of the things I found out when I got my letter in the mail regarding this property is, why are we doing M1 out here? We pushed all of that as a city out towards Cole Road, you know, where Meta is, where everybody else is, and I'm like, okay, why are we doing this all of a sudden? We actively tried to push this out there. And I found out some information on the DA agreement for Osprey Ridge, didn't have any termination clause, didn't have any expiration, and basically gave a blanket R3 kind of designation for that whole property. So one of the things that worried me is development, residential development right along Locust Grove. I figured would be the most, you know, logical. So the higher density residential apartments, et cetera, would be probably placed along Locust Grove. So in kind of looking at this project and the alternatives, my wife and I kind of like the idea of having this data center over the alternative. So, you know, all things said, we'd rather have open ground farming. That's why we moved out there. But things that can happen, that might happen, that would happen, would be better mitigated, we feel, with this data center. It's a viable project, it's a viable company, it's a good company. I actually had the opportunity while I was in Kansas City on another site visit for my work to visit their current facility that they're building outside of Kansas City. Nicely done, good, quiet operation. I didn't even think the building was in operation, but they assured me that it was operational, the first one. So I'm like, okay, it's quiet. I really feel that this is a good use of this property, and I support the Yamamotos. They've been great neighbors, they've been great community people, and I think this is probably their best idea of what they can do and their best chance at it. So I support the agreement, and I can answer any questions otherwise. Thank you.
Thanks. Next up, I've got Anna M. Paz.
Hello, Commissioners. My name's Anna Paz, 345 North Avenue, East Avenue, Cuna. I am the owner of Enrique's Mexican restaurant located here in the heart of Cuna. I have been researching the company that's interested in purchasing Dwayne and Judy Yamamoto's property. And with my research, I am here tonight in support of rezoning of the Diod Ventures property from agriculture to light industrial. And from what I have found, they will benefit the whole community. They will be doing that by bringing more jobs, and by bringing more jobs, that's going to bring more people into the community to support all local businesses, including myself. So as a business owner, I look at that as a positive thing, not just next. They will also have high-paying IT positions available, as well as long-term economic gains due to sustained construction employment over a multi-year program. This company will have an opportunity to make contributions to the city, as they mentioned, and also participate with what the city of Kuna has to offer. Due to the property being so far out there, they will have low usage of public services and low impact to traffic. I know from experience, being in business over 26 years in Kuna, how difficult change is to the community. When we moved over from our old location of 4,000 square feet to our current location of 13,000 square feet, there were a lot of mixed emotions from the community regarding this change. With that said, I feel as long as Diode Ventures follow and do what the commission requires them to do for the rezoning, they should be able to do what they feel is appropriate with the property. Everyone that knows Dwayne and Judy will know they are not just looking out for their best interest, but for their community as well. Thank you for your time.
I believe it's Brenda Bittman. Blitman.
Brenda Blitman, it's 8460 South Locust Grove, and that's Meridian, Idaho. I'm up Locust Grove a few miles I'm north of the Kuna Road, not south of Kuna Road, but it's on Locust Grove. I'm a Kuna person. I've been here since I grew up on a farm here with all the other farmers that are in the room. I didn't farm, but I've been involved with raising awareness about the school district through bond and levy elections over the last 20 years. And I can't count how many elections I've been involved in. It's a lot. And one of the big questions that comes up when we have these elections for bond and levies is how come we don't have a bigger commercial or industrial base in Kuna? So how come all the weight falls on the houses? And it's because Kuna has historically been a bedroom community, that we had lots of houses. And in 2007, when this development was annexed with all of those acres, I just said, gosh, there's going to be lots and lots of houses down there, just to make the school district issues more complicated. And so I agree that my first choice would be to keep it like it was in 1970 when I was a kid. But second choice is let's figure out what we can do to make things best for everybody. And I think increasing the tax base so the school district can get funds from people other than houses is a really good idea. And if we can minimize the impact on the neighbors by having buffer zones and minimize how much other things that could happen around that facility, I think we can isolate it and make it be a good revenue producing asset, for the cities and the school districts, and at the same time minimize the impact on the neighbors. And I love the Yamamotos, so there's no question there either. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. And that brings us to the end of the list. I don't see any new faces in the room. Just a last call. Is there anybody in the room who didn't get an opportunity to testify? With that, I'll close the public hearing at 6:53. That brings us to our deliberation. I'm sorry.
Doug Hanson, Kuna Planning and Zoning Director. The applicant does have a chance for rebuttal.
Oh, yes. I apologize. That's the part I always forget. Does the applicant have any further comments?
Mr. Chair, or Mr. Acting Chair, either one. Heath Clark, 251 East Front Street in Boise. So I'll be brief. Just 3 quick points. One, with the Osprey Ridge Development Agreement, I just think it's important to emphasize that the way it is set up, and it always has been set up, is that each property owner, when they come forward, they have to stand on their own, and they have to jump through all the hoops that are identified in that development agreement and arrive at all those agreements for themselves. So this This application doesn't affect anyone else within that area. It doesn't give them any additional entitlements. It's just we're checking off the list that was set before us when that development agreement was adopted back in 2007. I also want to emphasize on the water, just to be clear, so there's currently an ag right. When that ag right is converted, it'll go down to about 70% of what could have been used under the ag right. So inherently, there will be a reduction on the outside amount of use that could occur under that. So we do anticipate a reduction in the water use. And then last, with regard to ACHD, again, 2 traffic studies. During construction traffic study is something like 550 pages. The post-construction studies like 300 pages. Again, ACHD's done their review. This is proceeding under the typical process, which is that ACHD identifies their specific mitigation that they want after having reviewed the traffic impact study. And again, Doug's already conditioned us to do what ACHD asks us to do. So we think that even though that review isn't fully 100% complete at this point, it's 98%, and we will be stuck with what ACHD requires of us when we get to that point. So, any other questions from the commission?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So now we'll officially close the public hearing. All right. Comments?
Well, there's a lot of support for it, isn't there? I've never seen a public hearing where I didn't have someone up here complaining about it. You know, my big concerns go back to water and changing an ag use to an industrial use. And I understand that the allotment for the water agriculturally, this is 70% less than that. But, you know, we still only have so much water. And when we're talking aquifers, you know, I'm not greatly schooled in the aquifers, but water is an issue for all the wells out here. So that does tend to be a concern of mine. As far as changing the use, I have no real issues with changing the use. Changing the zoning to a light industrial, I have no issues with that either out there. Other than that, I guess that when it comes back to us in the future, when it's an actual project, we'll have opportunities to address specifics of the project at that time. So I think that's about where I stand on this.
You know, I mean, it's, you know, overall, it sounds like it's going to be something positive for the community. I mean, it's obviously hard to let go of agricultural land, you know, as I think everybody has stated here, they'd rather see it continue to be farmed, you know, but due to circumstances, it's just not, you know, the best case scenario. But, you know, at the end of the day, if all the environmental issues are addressed and, you know, taken seriously, and, you know, we're not going to be, you know, using more water in the future, or, you know, any other resources that the community is having a hard time with right now, you know, it's definitely a more positive impact on the community than if we were to throw in 1,000 homes out there and add more kids in the school, more sewer, more water and traffic and all that. So, you know, it's definitely tough, but, you know, it's good to hear that there is so much support from neighbors. And, you know, I think with the exception of, you know, one person just having some questions in how it's going to affect them, and I hope that the applicant addressed those issues or those questions, so.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything really to add. I agree with both these guys. Water's concerned. Even though it's going to use 30% less than they will be now, what they're putting back in the aquifers is a concern. But I basically with them, I don't have any trouble really with changing the zoning
Yeah, and I don't think I have anything reasonable to add either. As stated, can't state it enough, I would love to see it stay farmland, but all things considered. With that, I think I would stand for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we recommend approval of case numbers 24-01-CPM and 24-01-ZC with conditions as outlined in the staff report.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion passes. With that, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Hennis.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. So with that, there's no other items on the agenda, so I would reach out to staff to see if there's any additional reports.
For the record, Doug Hanson, CUNA Planning and Zoning. There's nothing further for this evening.
Thank you.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
Seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.